So like, yeah, I mean, Ollie had something like this with his brother as well. And Ollie's a pretty substantial guy. I mean, he's like very present as a physical, as a guy. I mean, you know, he looks pretty, you know, I wouldn't want to get into this physical disagreement with Ollie. I think he would knock me into next week. Like, and he's got this brother who, from what he said, isn't really that much of a physically intimidating presence. I'm not saying Ollie's intimidating. I'm just saying that Ollie looks like you should think twice before you try and knock him over. Me and my brother, more evenly matched. We're roughly the same build and height. He's almost certainly more physically fit than me after, because he has to stay fit for his job. But I was very angry, and I had a lot going on. The thing is, what's interesting is that there was a man-to-man standoff, and he was under the impression he could speak to me however he wanted. He was presuming an enormous amount. And that's something that I got from what Ollie said about him and his brother, is there was a kind of a vibe of like, I'd love to call it pulling rank. I'd have to, you know, I've forgotten. In my case, it's a younger brother, a much younger brother. I'm the eldest, and he's the youngest. I wonder if it's the case of Ollie as well. What conceited arrogance, you know? I mean, I'm his older brother. I've looked after my mum all this time. I know I'm missing the point of my own video here, and he's gonna talk to me like he's my dad. Well, he got talked to not like I was his dad. He got talked to like he just picked a fight with the most dangerous lunatic in the pub, for better or worse. And that's what he got. And he's standing with his foot on the footrest of his car, and he says something that changes the confrontation right there, because I was happy for him to turn around, drive away, and never see him again. I think he knew that, and I think he was a bit worried about that. Give me a second here. Not because he cares for me, but because he didn't want to upset the delicate lattice of inheritance issues and stuff like that. He didn't want to be in a position where he could never come back to the house again. That's what happened. He suddenly, in a funny way, only now did he wake up. But that says so much about how people didn't have to take my feelings into consideration. Do you see how this feeds in with the stuff earlier about my friend and his wife, the puppy stuff, the stuff about the stuff at work, the scapegoat at work who has to take the, you know, if push comes to shove, has to take the, and the mob guy who does the time for the mob boss, you know? It's all there. And I'm not saying I'm explaining anything to you haven't already heard. But this is the Mr. WTF matrix of it, you know. So, he's standing there with his foot on the footrest, and I've just shown him a side of me that he was confident he could handle, and he's not confident he can handle it anymore. I had a lot of frustration, a lot of rage, and I'd just been talked down to by this little shit who couldn't even buy flowers on the way to see his mum. He must walk, knowing what his job is, he must walk past a flower stall every time he's at work. Did his missus get flowers? Anyway, the thing he said to get himself out of it was, okay, fine, if you want to talk, let's talk then. And I don't know how I feel about it anymore, but I gave him his shot, and we had a proper conversation. Did I want to salvage the relationship? I wasn't in that place then when I was making that call. I certainly wasn't going to let him get away with it. But if he wanted to talk and accept some responsibility, I was going to give him that chance. And so then we went into a very serious conversation. It started to rain, and we stood under the garage door, and we had a conversation, and I told him some home truths. He tried to dive around a few of them. He made a lot of excuses, a lot of them about how demanding his job was, how he gets very tired at work, but he is doing the job he always wanted to do and spent his life training for. He's got his dream job. He's got a lovely, great big house. He gets paid a fortune. He has a beautiful missus. I can't say too much without giving away his job, but let's just give you a clue. It involves transporting people from place to place in the air. And he met his missus on the job. So basically, he tried to defend himself, and he had a whole host, he had a whole deck of cards, but it was one crappy card game of cards, you know, and it was pretty pitiful. And I just told him, you know, no, it's not like that. And I said, do you have any idea what I've been through? Do you have any idea what it's like? Do you have any conception of the lack of freedom, of the sleep deprivation, the constantly being on call? Do you and he didn't, but none of that really did any good until we got to an example of a time when my mum, the first time she went into hospital and had nearly died, and I'd come down with a cold, and we'd been in, I'd had to let him know that she'd gone into hospital for some reason. Because at the time came when I gave up doing that. But he had a day off, and I can't remember the chain of events, but he must have got in touch, or I got in touch. No, she was so seriously ill, I'd let people know. That's right. She nearly died. She was seriously ill, and I contacted my sister and my brother, asked them to contact my father, and said, look, this could be it. And he said, look, I've got a day off tomorrow. I'll come up to the hospital with you. And we went to the hospital together, and we went and saw her. And he was really weird at the hospital. Like, he was. Now I look back, I understand a lot more about narcissism from his behaviour, or narcissistic behaviour from his behaviour. He kind of went through the whole thing, kind of like this. Yeah. And we went into the room where my mum was, and we sat down, and he kind of sat like this. And I looked from my mum to him, and I realised I was going to do all the talking. And I was like, hey, Mum, you know, they're looking after you, you know. I looked round at him. Kind of like, if you've ever seen the British TV comedy show Peep Show, kind of like he became what the character Jez, right? And he kept that up for the whole half an hour. I think I'd taken my mum some books to read and stuff like that. And visiting time came to an end, and we walked out, and he was going to give me a lift home. And so walking along, nobody saying anything. And I turn around to him and I say, she's not very good, is she? And he's there, and he's like, no, she isn't. And I'm thinking, right, yeah, walking along. No, she isn't. I'm thinking, anytime you want to express a genuine, authentic emotion, just feel free, I'm thinking. Probably gonna die. He's not saying that. I'm just trying to figure out what was going through his head. So we're still walking, and we're walking. He walks really slowly, and I've seen this before. I've seen it with my father. It's this really weird, fake kind of way of going, ah, well, as they walk away from a burning building. I know I'm being hysterical there and being silly, but it's like there's some shit's happened. They're going, well, it's just the way the cookie crumbles. It's not the way the cookie crumbles, all right? shouldn't do that. The neighbours have got kids. And I mean, this is, for me, it's a critical situation. Anyway. So we're walking towards the car, and I don't recognise the car, so I ask him about, he's giving me a lift home, and I ask him, and of course it's his girlfriend's car. I hadn't even met his girlfriend, right? I hadn't even met her, or no, he had one really at that point. He kept all this quiet. And so we end up talking about the car, and we're getting the car, and now he's talking. I'm like, oh, this is a nice car. Yeah, it is, yeah, it does about, 365. I'm thinking, is this really happening? I mean, he's my brother, it's our mother. Is he not going to have a conversation with me? Is he not going to say to me when he pulls up outside my house, listen, man, we're all thinking of you, you know, you really got in there for us all. No. It's fake shit. It's just wall to wall fake. And I go home, I go to bed, I wake up the next day and I've got a cold. I've got a sore throat, I'm streamy and I'm not good. And of course my plan was to go to hospital and do the visit for my mum. And I'm so poorly, and I've got poorly so quickly, I don't think I should go. And my brother's told me he's got a day off work today. So I text him and I say, Dave, I'm sorry, but I'm really sick. I can't do the hospital visit. Would you do it? And I send the text. And I don't hear back from him. I don't hear back from him in 10 minutes. I don't hear back from him in half an hour. I don't hear back from him an hour. I don't hear back from him after 2 hours. At 3 hours and 45 minutes, I crack. And I send him a text telling him this isn't good enough. I say, what do you think you're doing? I need to know what's going on. I'm not well. I can't do the hospital visit. Why haven't you got back to me? Right. And I got back such a nasty text. He said, the text kind of had the character of this. Hang on a minute. That's what the kind of vibe of the text was. I think you'll find, sort of type thing, you can't talk to me like that. Just for your information, I was actually driving on the way over to you right now, but now I've had a text, I've turned around and gone home. And it went on, and I let him have it then by text. I said to him, "How, you know, you're out of line. I ask you for nothing all this time, and this one time, you know," and he wouldn't have it. He wouldn't accept it, and he actually fucking argued with me. And he said, "You know nothing about the demands of my job." And he went on and on. Right. So we're outside. So jump forward again. We're outside having this conversation underneath the garage door, talking, and I've tried to get him to understand what it's been like and why he's going to get this attitude off me after all I've done and after the way I've been treated. And he's not getting it until we get to this example of the text. And I say to him, well, what about that time when Mum was in hospital the first time and you got the message from me asking if you could do the hospital visit? In the end, I got over the cold really quick and I went, right, in the end, by the way. And he said to me, well, yeah, you weren't being reasonable. And I said to him, no, I've got it all wrong. Oh, what an idiot. But don't worry, it still stands because I'm pretty sure we did them both. Well, that's one example. It wasn't even that, it's even worse. It was a different thing. Oh my God. Sorry. What idiot. God, me and my stories. There was, after my mum died, I texted him and said, I asked him for advice about how much money he thought our father would better free up to help me buy my own flat or my own house. And I said, can you get back to me? And because it's complicated, but I was going to come into some money, and I knew that my father had some other reserves, and I needed to know what the future held for me. And I texted him, and I said, would you get back to me? And he didn't get back to me for days, and I was starting to need to know what I was going to do. The reason was a really good cheap property had just come up on the market, right, not far from my girlfriend's house. And it was such a good price, and it was just a nice little property, a little bungalow, and it would have been perfect. And I was going to be in a position to throw in X amount of money, and if my dad could have thrown in X amount of money, I'd be sorted, and they could sell this house and do whatever the fuck they wanted. And I asked my brother for advice, and he did not get back to me. And this house didn't stay on the market. I mean, that for sale sign was down within 5 days. And I was on day 1, I was on to him, and I hadn't heard back from him from day 5. The for sale sign had gone down. Day 7 or 8, I got a text from him saying, and do you know what he said? He wouldn't answer the question. He just said, if you want, we can get together for a cup of coffee and talk about it. And this is like this is a week later. So we're having this argument outside in the garage, and these are 2 examples I'm giving him of when I've needed his help, and he's dissed me, right? He's blanked me, and then I brought up the one about this time when I asked him for financial advice, because me and my father don't get on, and him and my sister, at least my sister, I think him as well, have had down payments on houses, right? And I had some money, I had to liquidate something, I had some money that I could use and throw in, right? But I needed help, and he didn't get back to me, and in the time it took him to not get back to me, the for sale sign came down, okay? And it wasn't an unreasonable request, right, that my father might help me set myself up after what I had done, okay? And I told him this, and he said, well, no, you got to understand, he said to me. You've got to understand, he said, I have a really busy job, I'm not always at home when I get your text. I do, I can't get back to you. I think he did this at one point. He went, how much do you know about my job? How much do you know about my job? He said, this is the kind of behaviour I'm talking about. Questions, putting you on the spot, making out that you're somehow deficient after what you've just done. After what you, after all of the how dutiful I've had to be all these years, right? And he's going to talk to me like I'm somehow, God knows what they thought I was doing here. They just shut it out of their minds. They must have thought I just lived here. Anyway, he's like, how much do you know about my job? All this sort of thing, right? And I said to him, man, you got to understand, it was the best part of 10 days. And he said, and do you know what he did? And he was so sure. He got his phone out, and he went through, because we don't have a lot of text communication, and he found it, and he was going, no, I tell you what, we'll have a look. Yeah, we'll have a look. So sure he's going to prove me wrong. And then he's standing there, and we're talking, and he looks at it. And he looks at the dates. And to his credit, and you won't be hearing a lot of that in this conversation, he fessed up. He said, he texted me, let's have a look. He's so sure, he's convincing me that I'm being a hysteric. I'm starting to think, maybe it wasn't 10 days or 7 days, whatever it was. Maybe it was 2 days. Maybe I'm a lunatic, right? And he's got it, and he's going, 7th of June. And then I text you back on the, that's the 15th. So yeah, you're right, it's over a week, yeah. And I'm looking at him going like, and do you know what? It was a full win. I was like, it was a clear win. He knew. Not that it was going to really change anything, but it was strike one. All that pushing and shoving didn't get me anywhere. All that telling him about the sleep deprivation and what I'd been through didn't get me anywhere. Do you know what he said to me about that? He said, oh, I have visited your mother. I've come in when you've been in bed asleep. Don't forget from the last video, I was up till 5:30 in the morning for a protracted period, and I'd be in bed till 11, because 11 was when my mum used to wake up, And then it was time for me to go back on duty, get a breakfast. Well, she's had breakfast. The carers would give her breakfast about 7 o'clock, but she'd go back to sleep. Then I'd get up and I'd have to make a cup of tea and get her lunch. So at 11 o'clock I was on duty. So he was saying, "Oh, I've come in this house and you're fast asleep." I have no idea where he's getting that from, because if my brother came into this house on his own volition and had spoken to my mum, unless she was on very high levels of medication, which she very seldom was, she would have told me that she'd seen him, you know. My mum saw what I think might have been a ghost at the foot of her bed once, and she told me about that. I mean, she thought it was my sister. She saw a woman standing at the foot of her bed. I came down one day and she was talking about this. Well, she thought it was my sister. She said, "I saw, your sister last. When will your sister be coming back to see me?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And so she saw an apparition of some kind, whether it was an hallucination or whatever. There is another conversation to be had one day about some of the things that went on here with all of the mind-bending stresses of it all, which changed my mind, won't change yours or a lot of your minds. It's one of those things you've either got a toe in this water or you haven't. It changed my mind about some of the beliefs we hold. Some of us more scientific people. I'm not so scientific anymore. But my mother, right, saw some kind of, whether it was in her own mind or she really saw an apparition, she saw a woman standing at the end of her bed, and she thought to tell me that, right? So if my brother had come in, I guarantee you, he should have mentioned it. So if he did it and she was asleep, he did it once or twice when she was asleep and didn't do it again. I think he's talking about a time way back when me and him were still on speaking terms more, or it was less of an issue. And sometime he was working on his car and he came in to use the kitchen to wash his hands or something, because he was working in the garage and I wasn't around. I think he's talking about something like that. And he said, "Oh, I've been in to see your mother. I visited her, and you weren't around. I mean, you were in bed, weren't you?" Then here's the narcissistic bit. I mean, if you need your sleep, Paul. 5:30 in the morning, every morning for 18 months. After that, my mum became bedridden, and she had a catheter fitted and stuff like that, and there was no more of her needing to be taken to the toilet till 5:30 in the morning. So we've just had this conversation about the times he wasn't there when I needed him, which were very, very few. I asked him for anything. How long he would leave it before getting back to me. And this, I think it might have been 10 days. It could have been 6, 7, but it might have been 10. And when he got back to me, he didn't get back to me with an answer. And the fucking for sale sign had come down anyway. And he says to me, he realises he hadn't done it. And he says to me, "Well, look, you've got to understand," he said, "I'm very busy. And I don't always get texts anyway when I'm working." And I said, you know what I said to him? I said, "Do you reply to texts from your girlfriend?" What does that take, 10 days? And that was strike two. He was fucked. He was like this. Just looking at me. Just looking at me. A real man at that point would have to do this. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. I should have. Man, I can't apologise enough. You just got to understand. I didn't want to think about it. I found it really hard. Now we got there in the end. We had that bit of the conversation when I'd hammered him for an hour. That was all he had. He just said to me in the end, "You got to realise I didn't like seeing her like that." And I said, but I didn't ask you to see her. I asked you to buy her flowers sometimes. Then I made a mistake. Because I let him have it for much more quietly, you understand? And then I made a mistake. I said to him, look, I need you to go away. I need you to think about things I've said. This is the mistake. I don't expect you to accept all the things I've said to you today. I shouldn't have said that without the caveat. What I meant by that was, because you're too weak. Because you are a weak man. That's what I should have said. But I just said, I don't expect you to accept all the things I've said today. And he went, yeah. And a kind of like, no, I won't. And I said, but if you can accept some of what I've said here, and you can come back to me and tell me you understand, then maybe I can forgive you. And that's how we left it. So why have I asked you to come all this way with me today? It's time to wind the video up. Enormous videos I'm doing at the moment. Huge videos for me. What was going on for him during that conversation? What was his modus operandi during that? A conversation that we didn't have to have. He came bunny hopping across the road to talk to me. He got wind of the mood I was in very quickly. He became provocative and aggressive, and he found out that was a bad move, and he was told to leave, which he didn't want to do. He then initiated a conversation which he throughout tried to reframe his position as being the morally superior one, which was hopeless, but his arrogance and his superiority is so pronounced, he was confident he could do it. And then he's given his instructions, right? You go away and you think about this situation, otherwise me and you aren't going to know each other anymore. And he thought he could dive that. Needless to say, I've never heard from him again. I've not had a letter or an email or a text. And he still comes to that garage and works on his cars. And I just stay the fuck away from him. So what was he thinking while we went through all that? He was thinking, how am I going to suffer this crap and hold on to the way I see myself? He was preserving, like Dorian Gray and his painting in the loft, he was preserving the way he likes to see himself versus the way I was telling him he was. And even if we got that far, even if I broke through his veneer of a self-aggrandizing, narcissistic, but benevolent self-image, right? Even if I got him to consider for a moment that all was not well, the furthest he would have come was it was just my opinion. And it's not the world's opinion. It's not a fact. It's not empirical. The furthest he would have got was that it pissed me off. That's as far as he would have got. No further. And they can live without us. That when we stand up to them, they can quite happily, basically what they do is this, they go, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I'm like, no, easy, whoa, excuse me. services rendered, and I'm your brother, and this was our mother, and you, mate, have been a negligent piece of shit. You've been a little bitch. And his attitude is, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's very unfortunate that I'm sure we all appreciate what you've done. That's the kind of bullshit talk, you know, that they'd come out with if they even went that far. But he made sure he didn't say anything like that. Man, they're so sure it's going to go another way. And why wouldn't they be? They're not the one that's their father hates. Entitlement. Seven years of my life completely drained away from me. The last of my youth. You know? And he tried to tell me that he gets tired in his job. A job he chose to do, a job he trained to do, a job he was free to do, and his great big fuck off house, and his, you know, his you know, photo fit type girlfriend. He's lovely, by the way. I liked her, but it's just. All of that stuff, all of the facts of it, all of me actually looking after my mum, actually all the times I had to go to hospital with her in the middle of the night, all of the lack of freedom, all of the lack of being able to have relationships. I remember going through a couple of dating cycles or three, and then there was one. I think at the end there were 3 or 4 women I got to know. 2 quite short affairs, if you like, before my mum got really poorly. And then I started going over to see a girl in a nearby town. This is all before my mum got really ill. And that was a weird one. She wasn't really interested in a relationship at all. She was doing... I'd get there and there'd be other people there. It wasn't a date at all. It was kind of like she kept having these kind of like miniature parties. She was a strange girl. And when I realised that wasn't going anywhere, nowhere near as quickly as I should have done. No, there were 4. I can think of another one now as well. I got to the point when I just thought, and all of the upset and the pain and the heartache of hoping this person might like you or be reasonable or be something. And I looked at my mum one day and I just thought to myself, and this is when I really grew up, and I thought, either look after your mum or don't. And then I realised it wasn't about me. Not now. Not right now. And that's what the carer goes through. My little brother, he gets to do the job he wants. He gets to make the money that comes with that job, and he gets to, you know, run off with the pretty girl, and he gets to buy the big house, and then he complains to me that he gets very tired in his job, don't you know? They hadn't even had kids. They hadn't even had any kids. Even if he was tired then, when they hadn't got kids, what on earth is it like now they've got a kid? I like to tell myself that's when he stopped being in contact with me, after he had the kid. And then I said it to him at the time. I said, how can you talk to me about being tired when you haven't even got kids? I mean, and I haven't got kids either, but I knew, I've since then done childcare, but I know that children disrupt your sleep, like babies disrupt your sleep. My sleep was disrupted. Oh, well, let me put it this way. Putting your mum on the toilet in the middle of the night is quite... I'm not taking anything away from mothers, especially single mothers, right? Not in a million years, but, you know, taking someone that's heavier than you and putting them on the toilet is quite different from trying to get a baby back to sleep. As, you know, just help me out here. I mean, come on. Christ. I mean, my life was tough. It was tough, and you don't know when it's going to end. I got to the point when I thought I would be in my mid-50s before she died. I thought she might go on a long time, and it was just one of those things. It was like 1 year, and I could see that her illness was getting worse and worse, and I could see on the horizon I'd have to start feeding her soon. That she wouldn't be able to feed herself much longer, and that really scared me. And I remember thinking, I don't think I can do it. And then that winter, she got pneumonia, and that's it. Because you see, when somebody's sick, you see, there are things weakening them you don't see. There are things that are part of the picture that you don't detect. They can be perfectly healthy in every other respect. Their blood test results would say they were good. But when somebody is inactive a great deal because of ill health, and they're poorly, and the nature of the illnesses that she'd actually got are degenerating the system all the time, one day a virus gets in there, probably caught off one of the carers or nurses who had been to other houses. No blame given to them at all, and it just effortlessly works its way through the immune system, gets into the zone, and they're gone. I mean, you've got to understand, it was a massive relief. It was a massive relief. It's just fucked when there's no way out, there's no nice ending to a situation like that. You resent the situation when you care for somebody like that. You don't even... Other people tell you you must really love them. You honestly don't know if that's true. By the end, you don't know anything. You're just finished. it's not about you anymore. And it hasn't been about you for a long time. And then the narcissist's family fuck you over. All for the sake of protecting their petty and fragile, wafer-thin image of themselves, and they're going to sacrifice you for that. Gotta go. I'm going to post this because why shouldn't I?